All right, Eric and Jeannie here from the Cactus House. So I guess it was maybe a couple of weeks ago that we were watching the podcast interview with Jelly Roll and
Jay
Jay
Shetty.
Shetty. And uh, it was a Saturday morning, but we were watching it. We watched the whole thing. And on our walk later that day, we started talking about that podcast. And, I was just asking you, what did you take away from it? What did I take away from it? And that really birthed our next podcast, which is where we are talking on a walk about what we gleaned from from that podcast that we watched. And so, um, before we have everyone dive into the
hmm
to the podcast, was there anything just off your top of your mind that you just wanted to encourage our listeners with?
I would encourage you to go listen to it. It's hour and 50 minutes of really good stuff. It's not a waste of your time. But he talks a lot about like his past and mental health, and I want to keep watching it over and over and over. I think I could get something out of it, something new every time. So, yeah. What did you get?
I'm still processing how we look at people, whether we think they're addicted to something or they're not, or poverty or not. And even this morning, you and I were reminded, we were sitting on our front porch drinking coffee pretty early this morning.
Yeah.
This car kind of stops at our house, and the guy rolls down the window and is like, "Hey, how long have y'all lived here?" Told him how long we've been there. Well, come to find out, about 2 years ago, him and his girlfriend and like two babies came up to our house. He was hungry. We gave them snack bags. We fed them. Unfortunately, his girlfriend died of an overdose. But he now he's getting his life together and taking care of the babies. And he was literally just saying, thank you, that changed his life, that impacted his life. And so it was just another reminder of how we treat people and how we view people, that they are of value, that they do mean something, and they do have a purpose. You may not think that they do, but they do. Just kind of taking away that concept from the Jelly Roll interview.
Yeah, no matter what your circumstances are or were, there is hope. There is an opportunity for you to change your life and for people to see.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, we hope that you guys enjoy this next podcast. It's just Genie and I on a walk. I didn't see Insta Granny this time, so she might have been around. Probably hiding out, watching, but
She's too busy taking steps to win.
We'll have to figure out how many steps she got in next time we talk to her.
Yeah.
For October. But and by the way, let me know next time you let her into the house. She kind of scared me last time.
Yeah.
But no further ado. We hope you enjoy this next podcast where we talk about our takeaways from the Jelly Roll podcast with Jay Shetty. Yesterday, you and I were watching, I guess it's a podcast.
It is a podcast.
Yeah, podcast. This is Jay Shetty podcast, talking about purpose, and Jelly Roll was on it. And you and I have grown to really appreciate and like Jelly Roll and just his story, his wife's story, Bonnie. But watching that interview podcast was eye-opening for us. Maybe not eye-opening, but affirming some things we thought. But
I may have shed a few tears throughout watching
well,
the podcast. It's very emotional. I would say it is a hour and 15 minutes well spent of your time for you to go watch it.
yes, and I will.
It's on YouTube. And it's also on, like, just, the sound, the podcast, no video on, I know for sure, Spotify and Apple.
Yeah, and I'll put a link somewhere down below somewhere. Um, but I mean, one thing that I'm still thinking through and processing I really enjoyed was his input thought process on addiction and people battling addiction, whatever. It doesn't matter what.
Food addiction,
Yeah,
drug addiction,
alcohol,
video game addiction.
exactly. Like it was not
Addicted to working out so much it is detrimental to people's health.
Yeah,
Like it could be any type of addiction.
yeah. I mean anything, and he made that clear. But one of the things that stuck out, and it really resonated with you and I, and even for this, what we do, our podcast, was so many people will look at an addict and go, why don't you just stop? Like, it's not that hard. Like, stop working so much, or stop eating so much, or stop drinking. Like, why? Like, it's not that hard. Anybody can do it. You just don't have the will. And he really brought home a point that you and I felt to be so true, was we don't know what that person has gone through, is going through, that led them to that addiction. Like, we don't know the backstory half the time.
Trauma, that whatever traumatic event that triggers something in them that makes them, in order to get away from that, go to that addiction.
Right. Like his was, in regards to, women, he was, I guess if you want to call it addicted to women, he was having multiple women, but he was doing that so that he wouldn't think about his weight and his body appearance.
If I can land a hot woman,
and multiple of them at once,
like
that made him feel better. And he talks about his battle, his struggle with eating. Like that's just, he's never known. He said he's never had a good relationship with food. And I mean, how many of us we go down these roads where, and again, I'll raise my hand and you will testify. I mean, I really struggle with sweets. I mean, and it's really like very specific, and even on top of that, I mean, like you could put chocolate in front of me and I'd turn it down, but you put milkshakes or, cheesecake, key lime pie, a Dairy Queen, those kind of things. Like, and I know we laugh because
anything with an ice cream base.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. Ooh, an ice cream cake.
Yeah.
But that is hard. Like, and I know people can look at me, and people have said this to me, like, Eric, you're disciplined in so many areas of your life. How can you not be disciplined in that?
Right.
But
I mean, but it also, where did that stem from? Because I mean, I've met a lot of people that when they were sick, or when they had a bad day, or when something happened, the reward or the comfort or the thing that's going to make it better is we'll go get you an ice cream cone. We'll go get you a milkshake. Like,
yeah, and growing up, that exactly was me. So I vividly remember, if I had any kind of mouth, stuff. I had braces for 4 years. So, if I got my braces tightened, which if you've had braces, that's the first day or two is a little painful. So we'd go get a milkshake. Or if I just wasn't feeling good and I was truly sick, my parents would go get me a milkshake and bring it back. So then it turned into, if I'm having a bad day, or I'm feeling down about myself for certain things, I still, 40 years later, I still turn to those. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I just eat it just because my sweet tooth flared up. I mean, but it really is hard um, for me to say no to those things. Um, and it's not just one of those, Eric, just don't eat it. People that have been in small groups with me, when desserts are brought out, they know that I will indulge a lot till we're almost sick at times. And it's not a just don't eat it.
Well, another little quirky thing about you is that most of the time, doesn't matter what type of restaurant, it can be a really nice restaurant like Helen or Cafe Du Pont or something like that, or it could just be a Mexican restaurant. You're gonna order dessert first, and you're gonna make sure you get your dessert. That's changed a little bit. You have kind of calmed that down, but that's just something a little quirky about you. If you like to order dessert first and you eat your dessert before you eat the things that might sustain you.
But that key lime pie will sustain me throughout the day. Uh, no, that is true. And, you know, it's just one of those, I don't know who did all this, but I mean, I know it's been done several times, but, it's one of those where research has shown they'll put a couple of kids, in a room with, with hay. And if you wait, an hour, now you can get this reward or you can have it now. And what research is showing more and more, the kid that will wait and say, it says, wait, I'll get it later, versus the kid who says, I want it right now. It's how they were raised. The kid that wants it later, that will wait, like that's willing to wait, grew up in a household in an environment where he got it. Like it wasn't like he knew he would get it. Versus a kid who wants it right now, oftentimes grew up in a poverty-stricken area and never knew if they were going to get it or not. So they want it now.
Or they were told, no, you can't have that, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't.
Yeah.
So like, well, it's right here, I'm going to do it now.
Right.
Because I've been told no so many times.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that people should say yes all the time.
Right, but
everything.
But it's definitely eye-opening. And, again, somebody may say, well, why can't you just wait an hour to get this? Or, it's just an hour, it's a day. But it goes back to poverty.
Not just like we live in a time where anything and everything you can get in an instant.
Oh, Amazon.
If you want it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to wait. You can have the answer you want. You can have whatever. Like, so we've evolved into a time where
you don't
want that instant.
That instant gratification. And, that instant gratification, I'm going to call it microwave for this thought process. I feel we're getting in a place where we want a microwave community. Eric, what does that mean? I think what I'm saying is we go to a place and we connect with someone and we in our mind go, oh, I like this person. I have a connection with. But oftentimes we get in this microwave instant mentality and think, oh, well, now I'm great friends with, like, they're my best friend. Like, I love them so much. But the only time you see them are at events, gatherings, social things, there's not any real genuine sit around the table, campfire, deep conversations, 2 a.m. phone calls. You know my highs, my lows. I know your highs and lows, because that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And I think we're willing to say, "Oh my gosh, I love that person. They're my best friend." But it's this microwave relationship, this microwave community where we just try to zap it and say it's this, but it's really not.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm. Takes is it community should be what you're saying is community should be more like an oven. You like kind of like preheated, and then
Well, yeah, well, yeah.
preheat the oven.
It's like that connection is the preheat
Then
of the
there's
oven.
like this time of like, while it's preheating, like, discussion or whatever, and then you put it in the oven and, you know, starts baking and cooking, but it takes time. It doesn't happen in 2 minutes. It takes an hour.
Right. Which, again, going back to what we were saying earlier, sometimes we want something we've been taught we can get it just right now, instead of taking the time, the effort, the energy, the intentionality to really see it grow and to watch it blossom. Going back to Jelly Roll, that interview, that podcast with Jay Shetty, he's saying it takes time. He uses that story when him and his dad went to go see his grandma,
Mm.
and uh, they get in there, and Jelly Roll's dad says, well, Jelly Roll, and they use his real name, but in this conversation, they're like, he finally quit smoking, and Jelly Roll's, you know, looking at grandma.
So hard. It's so hard. It's some hard shit. Like,
and his grandma was like, I'm sure it is, and then his dad goes, yeah, but he still's got a mouth on him. And his grandma goes, well, he can't change everything all at once. And that is so true. And he's really soaking that in, is that he can't change everything all at one time.
well, but it also didn't get to the point, like, he didn't get to the place that he was instantly. Like, it took a long time, and
Yeah.
it for his addiction to have grown so big to where he could not control it anymore. That took time.
Yeah.
It's gonna take time
To unravel
to, to break it down.
Yeah. So I think, you and I, we talk a lot about hope and grace and healing. And I'm just saying, maybe someone's listening and they are struggling with some kind of addiction. And they're thinking, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. It may be you just cut back on something, right? I mean, you know this about me. I used to drink a lot of Cokes, or I want to say Coke products. I mean, I drink 4 or 5 a day. What did I do? I knew that wasn't healthy. So I just started getting back to 1 or 2, to where now, like, I don't really ever have a Coke product. But it took some time. Then it was, okay, I'm not eating healthy. I'm eating junk food. I'm eating fast food every day for lunch. What did I do? Okay, I slowly removed that, but replaced it with something healthy. I started doing some smoothies and things of that nature, to where, I haven't really had truly fast food in, 2 or 3 years, really. I mean, Chick-fil-A, literally every now and then.
You had to get to a point where you were ready to make the change. And so just because you think that the person needs to start right now, they've got to be willing to change in order for any change to start. Because, I mean, for years, like, that's not how I ate. You ate that way or whatever, but I didn't stand over you and say, hey, you probably shouldn't be doing that, or like dictate what you drank, what you ate, or whatever. You had to be ready to change that. I couldn't change it for you.
Right. And I think that's the grace part in all of this is you didn't do that. Like you let me hit that rock bottom per se, where I went, oh my goodness, like I've got five chins, like you know, um,
I
uh,
didn't see it.
yeah, well, but they're all covered up by each
Love
other.
is
That's why.
blind.
Yeah, yeah. You only saw one; the other four were covering up the rest. But but um, I had to get to a point where I made that change, but nothing was overnight, and I didn't make all the changes all at once either.
No.
It was a gradual, okay, I feel better with this. Let me start implementing this because I felt better. It wasn't me taking up running immediately. That wasn't, I mean, that was almost a month, 2 months really into stop drinking Cokes, stop doing fast food
Well, and
to
Daniel
feel
said in his interview during this podcast that, all these like cliches, like get outside, take a walk outside,
in the sun.
drink water, you'll feel better. And he's like, those are stupid. He's like, but then I started doing this, started drinking water, started getting outside, and I was like, oh, this is for real. But he had to be like, okay, let me try it. It's not easy. It's easier
Said than
said than done.
done. But, we want to encourage anyone that's listening that knows us. Just if you're struggling with that addiction, you're struggling with that negative, maybe it's just a negative, like you've got a negative mindset, like you're just negative Nancy, right? What can I do? What's one thing, two things I can do? Stop doing, replace it with something positive. It's not an overnight deal. It's not changing everything all at once. But what are just those one or two things that I can change, that I can put in, that in the long run, the long haul, will be a big difference maker. So I just love that. Anything like, was there anything that stuck out to you that
I
you?
mean, oh, there's so much. I was like, I want to go back and watch this. Um, Maybe that's what I should do. Should go back and watch it. But like, just also his level of like spirituality.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Even how he views his concerts now.
like, yeah, like, I think he had done a concert somewhere, and his wife came up to him and was like, man, you just had church. And he was like, Southern Baptist background in me or whatever, was like, that is so sacrilegious. That is not church or whatever. And then I had to take a step back and look and be like, that might be the only church that that person ever walks into. So he's like,
Yeah.
every concert of mine, I go into it like this could be the only church experience that someone has
That's right.
or whatever. Because it can be uncomfortable. Some church experiences can be very uncomfortable.
Yeah. And, I want to piggyback on the this might be the only church somebody has. Like, I want to say, and uncomfortable tagging these all together, is when you and I, others, anybody who's listening, whoever you're with, whether it's where you work, where you play, where you do community fellowships, whatever it might be, for some people, you may be the only church they ever experience or see.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you have to be careful with the words you use.
because the life is in the tongue, life and death, power is in our tongue. Where does that come from? Scripture is clear that comes from our heart, that's where it's in. And so what's in our heart is going to overflow out of our mouth and our actions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that is getting uncomfortable because we don't know who we encounter, what they're going through, what their trauma is, what their experiences are. We don't know. And so we have to be very careful and mindful about that what we're saying, I could be tearing somebody down, destroying them by the words I'm saying, and it may just be a joke, sarcastic, teasing, but I'm destroying somebody and I don't even know it.
Mhm.
And so if they think, well, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, I follow Christ, and maybe they don't, why would they want to be a part of that if I'm destroying them? They wouldn't.
And no, and then hopefully they'd speak up and be like, hey, that's not cool. And then that's when that ownership or that empathy or that, oh my gosh, you were so right. That was not very sensitive of me. That is not, or give me an opportunity to like explain and be like, I understand that was super hurtful for you, but this is how I intended it. And I will be so much more mindful in the future when I talk about this subject
Yeah.
that, um, that there are some underlying things that maybe I don't know about you yet, but I want to know. Like, I want you to give me some grace. I want to give you grace, but
Well, and I think, my dear friend and mentor, Steve Longnecker, he is so great on this. And what he's taught me is he does a lot of work and he's been doing, work in the prison system, for 35, 40 years. And so when he comes into these, to these systems and into the prisons, he's always telling these inmates and other people, hey, I don't expect you to trust me. Why? Because there's no base level there. So he'll say, hey, just watch me. Just hang around and watch me. And then that trust will form. And I think that's where, if we're modeling and we're being followers of Christ, that's really what Jesus is even saying to us is, hey, people are watching you. People are listening to you. That's how they build the trust. If they trust you, they don't trust you. And so I just want to encourage people, again, what we say is more powerful than I think we really think it is. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, we highly recommend that podcast.
it is a good hour and 50 minutes of your life. You'll not be like, oh my God, I just wasted an hour and 50 minutes. No, it is so
So good. So good.